organised by the city is ours. We're a small collective of people who've got together to basically try and raise issues connected to housing, and I guess with an election coming up, who better to focus on than Dick Wynne, the Minister for not doing much about housing other than selling it.
The point I'm making is that we're living in an empty continent with 3 people for every square kilometre compared to 400 people for every square kilometre in the Netherlands or 31 in America. And yet 200 years after we stole this continent from indigenous people, we've got 4,000 people, mainly young people, who'll be living on the streets of this city here tonight. We've got 41,000 people on the public housing waiting list, and this is the guy in here who runs the Office of Housing, is in charge of public housing. And we've got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are in the private rental market and suffering tremendous housing stress. But I just want to be very clear to you, any of you who think that by ticking one Steve Jolly Socialist Party in 2 weeks' time we're going to fix these problems, you're absolutely dreaming. The only way we're going to get these issues on the agenda is the development of a mass campaign. A mass campaign on the streets.
And can I say that regards housing for Aboriginal people, when they came in with the great apology, we know very well that it was a great facade, it was fake, and the whole of the Northern Territory intervention was based on a lie. It was a collusion of lie between government and the ABC late line. We found out then that with Aboriginal housing, the great promise that they were going to make us was that they would fill the gap, they would end the gap, that the gap was going to be finished within a certain time. And we're looking at the housing issues and problems here, and the gap has not been filled. As a matter of fact, the gap has broadened and it has worsened.
Lawson's a name, Harry Lawson. They lie. The men who tell us for reasons of their own that want us near a stranger, that homeless is unknown. With us near a suburb and the city proper meet, my windowsill is level with the faces in the street, drifting past, to the beat of weary feet. Well, I sorrow for the owners of those faces in the street, and cause I have to sorrow in a land so young and fair, to see upon those faces stamped the marks of want and care. I look in vain for traces of the fresh and fair and sweet in sallow, sunken faces that are drifting past the street. I wonder would the apathy of wealthy men endure were all their windows level with the face of the poor. Oh, mammon slaves, your knees shall knock when God demands a reason for the sorrows of the street, the wrong things and the bad things, and the sad things that we meet in the filthy lane and alley and the cruel, heartless street.
I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners, the Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge and apologise for the high levels of homelessness experienced by Aboriginal people across the country. I'm aware that many of my colleagues and comrades in the social and community services sector do not support direct action tactics, and furthermore do not support attending this rally. They do not want to be seen to be upsetting the current government apple cart. That would be unstrategic. I think it's beholding upon any person in the homelessness service system to take to the streets and give voice to an end to homelessness. The positive moves of the current state and federal governments and your particular work, Dick, over the recent months and weeks are to be applauded, but we should not under any circumstances voluntarily gag ourselves or resist or obstruct attempts by groups outside the service system to publicly demonstrate concern. Remember, it was Julia Gillard as recently as 9 January 2008 at a media conference in Melbourne who said, "I want to confirm today that a Rudd, now Julia, government will be changing contracts with the voluntary sector to make sure that the people in our society who work with the most disadvantaged can have their voices heard." I reckon if the French can take to the streets and upturn cars because the retirement age is lifted by 2 years, it's fine for us to take to the streets and demonstrate about the more than 25,000 people homeless in Victoria on any given night. High rates of homelessness in this country are a blight on all of us, and until we end homelessness, we are all complicit. In fact, we are learning to live with high levels of homelessness In the same way, we accept a level of unemployment appalling. I work for Flat Out, a support service for women coming out of prison. We are proudly part of the prison abolition movement. We want to end prisons and we want to end homelessness. Why? The single biggest driver to imprisonment is homelessness, housing security and affordability. In many cases, our women will be homeless, excluded from the housing system because they are poor and have done time, and many of our women's housing and associated support crises will result in a visit or a return to prison. The nexus between poverty and homelessness and the prison industrial complex is clear. It's modern day warehousing and punishment of the poor. Can I please ask you now to just do one small thing to advance prison abolition and an end to homelessness? Please raise your hand now for the photographers. Yes to end homelessness. And no to prison expansion.
There was a study done by RMIT and Homeground a few years ago, and it said, look, you know, this is true. There's a bit over 40% of people who are homeless also experience problems around alcohol and other drug use. There's no doubt about that. But what actually came out of that was another very interesting fact. It was very clear that for the majority of cases, about 2/3 of cases, the homelessness came first and caused the problems with alcohol and drug use. I've been doing this kind of work for about 10 years, so in the early noughties, about 2002, I started to ask some questions around people, you know, what are the things you're after? And outside of drug treatment or urgent health issues, housing and homelessness was the #1 issue, all right? No doubt about it. So that was 8 years ago. And I've had the opportunity to repeat that exercise this year, different setting but a similar context, and what do you know? The same #1 issue, housing and homelessness. So not a lot has changed in the last decade, and it's a problem. There's not enough crisis accommodation. Anyone who works in the alcohol and other drug sector would know that come winter there's a big surge in people looking to get into residential detox units, because at least you've got a bed and a roof for 1 week, you know, which might be better than your other options. And that crisis accommodation that is out there isn't always that great.
What we have to understand is that we have to get out, as Jolly and the others have said, we have to get on the streets and form like they do in France, peacefully, and tell them that we're sick and tired of the way that most people have to live. One person getting on the street, 2 people together, 3 people can do a lot of good work. Now, I would like to say that there's a couple of good things happening. The city is ours. What a wonderful little group they are. Now look what they've done today. Now, what a wonderful performance. There's the Housing for the Aged Action Group. Now they're doing a wonderful job. And then we've got our little group here, the Homeless Front, who are about 4 out there, about 4 people, and they do their bit too. So look.
I didn't probably sell hard.